Let's pay a visit to Mark's True Crime Corner.
This is not a good neighborhood. I'm scared.
Now, here's your host, Mark Thompson.
And here she is, my other half, who is obsessed with true crime, even as I could give a rat's A about it. It's Courtney, everybody.
Hi, again. Hello, yep.
Yep.
We have a really interesting story this
You
week.
do have an interesting story, and I'm excited that there's no one loses their life in this story, which is kind of what...
One person does.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
Do you think I would bring a story without a death, Mark?
All right, okay, all right. All right, Courtney, get us started.
All right. So the story this week is about a man who spent 30 years impersonating the Saudi royal family.
Wow.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
And it did work for 30 years.
It worked for 30 years.
That's unreal.
And how he gets caught will be very surprising. Because after 30 years, the way he's caught is just inconceivable.
Okay.
So it starts with this man named Jose Moreno.
I see him on the left in the Metro Dade booking photo.
Yep. I would suggest in this collection of photographs, Foxy, the black chihuahua, is really the biggest victim of this whole thing.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to that, I guess.
But so Jose Moreno is born in 1970 in Bogota, Colombia. And he and his brother are orphaned. So they're living on the streets of Bogota. And he's actually trafficked. This poor little boy and his brother, he's a couple years older than his brother. And they end up in an orphanage. And a couple from East Lansing, Michigan, adopt them and bring them to the U.S. They're about 7 years old. So when they come to the U.S., they rename Jose Anthony. So his name becomes Anthony Enrique Gignac. And so he's in East Lansing with his brother, and it's predominantly Caucasian. And he is bullied and left out a little bit. And so he starts to create these stories about his wealthy birth parents and his wealthy birth grandparents. A lot of that comes from wealth in Colombia at the time, really saved you and protected you from being harmed. And so he carried that through and started to create these narratives at a very young age. And in fact, when he's 12 years old, Anthony Enrique Gignac goes to a Mercedes-Benz dealership. He's in 6th grade, and he tells the dealership that he is a Saudi Arabian prince and that his father will be buying him a car. And so instead of laughing him out of the dealership, they put him in a couple of the cars and take him on some test drives.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's driving around with the dealership, and he's telling them that his father, who is the king of Saudi Arabia, will come and pay for the cars. He selects a car that he wants, and when the king of Saudi Arabia does not show up or send money, they call the police. And this is the first time that Anthony is put into therapy as a response to what would be a very big lie for such a young child. His parents divorce, his adoptive parents divorce, his brother goes with his father, Anthony stays with his mother, and that separation is really additional trauma for Anthony, who has only known his existence with his brother and really had these traumatizing memories and experiences as a child. And so
his young life has been marked by all of these separations, and the things that he becomes connected to are taken from him.
And this puts him in a mental facility.
Wow.
And so he's in an institution, and he runs away at 17, and he comes to Los Angeles. So he leaves the Midwest, he comes to Los Angeles, and it's here in Los Angeles as a teenager that he continues this misrepresentation or lie or impersonation of the Saudi prince. He's staying at fancy hotels.
Oh, so he fired up the impersonation again.
Yes.
Yeah. New crowd.
New crowd.
New big banging market, Los Angeles.
New.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it's the 90s. No, it's 1987. So stretch limos, big wealth, right? Symbol. Are they still? Do people still take stretch
I
limos?
think you're right to kind of point to the fact that in a way we've kind of positioned now to it's the Suburbans, it's the
Yeah.
dark, right? It's the
Yeah. Like
you're right.
when we call black car, it's the
Yeah,
Suburban.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But so that's when he starts. If you go down, sorry, Tony, that's when he starts to very specifically impersonate.
Yeah, those are the pictures that we were seeing.
Yeah.
Of that,
So
the
on the right hand
Sultan,
side is the Prince Khalid bin Saya.
and he's saying that he's his what?
He's saying he's impersonating him.
Okay,
And
he's
then
saying I'm Prince Khalid bin Al Saud.
Al Saud. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so this is the person that he impersonates then for the next 25, 30 years.
So we're seeing two pictures: Sultan bin Khalid Al Saud on the left, and Prince, who is the son then of the guy on the left.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Go ahead.
So he racks up bills at the Beverly Regent Hotel, at a bunch of restaurants, a bunch of stretch limo
And he just says,
companies.
my dad's going to pay it?
Yeah,
or
my
what?
dad's going to pay. My dad's going to pay.
But how long could you get away with that? You told me it's 30 years this whole one thing went on.
Well, he gets arrested for...
I see.
He gets arrested about 10 or 11 times before like the big frauds happen, which are millions of dollars. And then after Los Angeles, he actually goes up to San Francisco, spends some time in San Francisco, gets arrested. He then goes back home to Michigan. In Michigan, he convinces some frat guys, which, by the way, probably wasn't that difficult, that he's a prince.
Yeah, they're not vetting quite the way that some of these others
In
might
between their, like, beer bongs, he's
Yeah.
telling them that he's a prince, and so he takes some money and alcohol and food from them. But he eventually ends up in Florida. And so in Florida is where a large part of his crimes really begin. If you go down, there's a picture of him being arrested here in 1994 in Florida. There's another picture of him being arrested in Orlando in 2002.
be. Wow. So even though Florida's a good place to do your criming, he was trying to crime a little too much in Florida and is arrested.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Florida really does become home, but many of his arrests are in Florida. And so then if you go down, they show kind of they quote $65,000 Mercedes that he's driving. And you can see in the trunk of the Mercedes as they're arresting him, the extraction of all of these high priced luxury items that he has in the trunk. He went on major shopping sprees. He actually also penetrated into the royal family's house accounts at Neiman Marcus and at Saks Fifth Avenue.
So now you're buying things and they are being paid.
Yeah, and people were believing him. He was speaking fake Arabic, and people were believing him.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Nuts. Like no one was checking him out. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Okay, so if you go to the next visual, thank you. So in 2015, he starts an Instagram account, and his Instagram account is on the below right corner if you're watching, Prince Dubai _07, which I was asking you this morning. I mean, well, first of all, no royal family is Saudi royal family is going to have an Instagram account, much less one that's the seventh of the Princess of Dubai.
Yeah.
And this is just one example of the really garish, awful posts that he makes trying to show off his wealth.
Yeah, maybe a little too much peacocking is what does him in.
I mean, it's all
So he's got a Ferrari ring, watches, cash.
Yeah, this looks like stuff he Googled, like, $1 million in an attaché or whatever.
But maybe he didn't. I mean, that could have been his money. You're saying that once he'd penetrated the royal account, then all of these various expenditures, even as lavish as they are, they were covered by the royal account.
Yeah, they were covered by the royal account. Yep. And so he's posting on Instagram. If you go down, it's just crazy and over the top. He gets arrested again for stealing money from the royal family. It comes mostly from these house accounts that he's been charging to. And he gets put into jail. And he's in Florida. And so he starts calling defense attorneys and saying, I'm the prince. I'm a Saudi prince. My father is the king. He will pay you back. Can you get me out of jail? And one defense lawyer takes the bait and has some bail guys go and get him out for $46,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And eventually the police call they call the defense attorney who calls the bail guys and says, yeah, that guy's not a prince from Saudi Arabia. He's definitely not a prince from Saudi Arabia. And so as the bail guys are driving him back to jail, Anthony says, hey, can we stop off at an American Express office? And so they do. And he goes into the American Express office and he starts a sob story that he was mugged and his dad's going to be very angry with him because he's lost his credit cards. And so he convinces them that he is the prince.
Wow, he must really have a line.
To verify that he is the prince, they ask him, where were your last 2 charges? And he explains exactly where and what they were. And so they issue him a black card with, how big do you think that credit line was?
Well, hang on a second. He knows the last 2 expenditures because he has a connection?
Because he has a connection with the prince. He has worked with some of the security detail. And so they are telling
some
him.
people are connected to the prince, have access to the account and say, oh, the last 2 expenditures were this. So then he says to American Express, he relates the accurate information. What would the credit line be? I don't know. $500,000?
Yeah. Oh, that's adorable.
What is it?
It's $200 million.
Wow.
Yeah. So now he's got a black card very prominently all over his Instagram.
$200 million?
$200 million.
Why wouldn't you just, isn't there a way to hit it hard? And I guess maybe that's what he did.
Well, he does weird things. Like he books the entire first class of flights that he flies across the country with instead of just flying private, right? It's kind of weird. He also will book out like an entire floor of hotel rooms. He goes and he buys 2 Rolexes with the bail guys because that was his payment to the inside security team that was helping him with the information around what the real prince was doing and where he was spending.
Wow.
So he has enough forethought to
take care of the people who've been helping him.
But also to gain access to that.
Right.
But then doesn't have enough thought or like real conceiving of this whole thing to like learn Arabic or
just
really
to keep his expenditures in any way
or
manageable.
just leave the country with a $200 million
exactly. Take the 200 and run.
Joe Box and Little Anthony.
Yeah, he needed Joe Box and Little Anthony. Go ahead.
So this is the card. Again, I would suggest Universal Studios, probably not something that the Saudi royal family is going to visit. But a lot of pictures of meat and cars. And then I thought these were really interesting. These are from his Instagram. And I thought that to me does not look like a royal Saudi holiday, the one on the left.
Yeah, looks like looks like a lunch at Chipotle.
And so again, underscoring he's really working at 2 distinct areas of like conflict of like understanding some of the things he needed to do to create this story, but really not understanding how the wealthy would live. And so there, of course, is the Hard Rock Hotel, which I'm very confident that the royal family has never been to. Saudi royal family has never been to. So if you go to the next slide, this is Foxy. And Foxy is the love of his life. It is, Foxy is his baby Chihuahua. And Foxy, poor thing, is in every single Instagram post, is adorned with diamonds and Gucci, and poor thing sits in these ridiculous cars listening to very loud music, being dragged around the world with this man who is, of course, pretending to be Saudi prince. So if you go down, if you're watching, you can see all of this. So I brought some of these in because he was clearly Googling like royal Saudi family and then posting that on Instagram with words like fam and uncle and dad. And, people are people are getting why. Well, now people are going back and saying things, related to that. But it was very clear if you go down that a lot of these photos are just him Googling what he thought would be convincing evidence of who he actually was.
But the reality is he didn't have to do this. This all really led to his undoing, I would imagine. At some point, don't people start to, as you say, sort of think, this just isn't quacking like he's a real Saudi prince.
He's not in any of the photos. They clearly look like they're Google.
I mean, the one on the right,
searched.
at least it looks like maybe a kid who is kind of similar looking to him is being held by somebody who could be a Saudi prince or might not be a Saudi king or whatever. Anyway, go ahead. We're running out of time. So
I know.
please.
I'm trying to go quick. So if you go down a little bit further, we get to where the first of his very large crimes begins. So he moves into an apartment in Fisher Island,
which is the high-end place.
It's
Tom
a man-made
Brady's got a
island.
place there. Yeah.
Tom Brady, Oprah, anyone wealthy is living in Florida is living.
So
on
this is
Fisher
open.
Island.
He buys this place.
No, he's renting it for $15,000 a month, but he's telling everybody that he owns that entire complex that you're looking at.
Okay.
And so if you go down, this is right around the time where he meets this gentleman, Carl Martin Williamson. He's sort of known as like a master global networker, and they meet in 2015. And this is when there is the beginnings of conversations around an IPO for Aramco, which is the Saudi oil company. Yeah. So they decide and they collude to take people's money and say that, the prince, aka Anthony, has access to an earlier part of the IPO. And so people start to give Anthony money to get into this IPO, to get his shares of Aramco as being part of the royal Saudi family.
So now he has a cash flow.
He has $8 million. Wow. One person gave him $5 million. And so Carl helps him with that. And if you go down, they go so far as Carl orders him diplomat license plates from eBay, and they're driving around with them.
This is wild. Absolutely wild. This is an utter BS line that has been that nets him tens of millions of dollars.
Yes, and you would think, oh yeah, that's enough. The $200 million credit line, the $8 million that he now has with Carl. But you would be wrong, Mark, because the Fontainebleau Hotel is looking for investors because they're trying to revamp the hotel. And so our Anthony gets very excited about being associated with Jeffrey Salfer and his family and other billionaires that own this hotel. And so Carl helps to negotiate a meeting with Jeffrey Salfer. Here is the Fontainebleau. Am I saying that correctly?
Right, yeah.
And so Anthony, aka the prince, offers $440 million for 30% of the hotel, which is a gross overvaluation of the property.
Oh, so they scoop that up in a second.
Like, sure, done. So he meets Jeffrey, and they are going to go to Jeffrey's private home in Aspen. Mm-hmm. And so if you go to the next slide and kind of sit here for a second. So do you have the video, or is it too difficult to play?
I don't have time to play it, really.
Okay.
I'm way behind, please.
Okay, so I'll just speak quickly. So Jeffrey takes him to Aspen. They get into an argument because Jeffrey's doing some due diligence.
There is the video, though.
There's the video. This has been taken down probably because of Jeffrey Salfer's family, but you can see he's sort of showing his watch, which he does in every single video. And then there's the image of Jeffrey Salfer. So they go to Aspen, and Jeffrey does some due diligence on the prince, asking if he really does own that large complex in Fisher Island. The prince finds out that he's doing that. They get into an argument. And so Jeffrey buys him that Cartier Panther bracelet as a gift because Carl and the representatives for the prince say you have to buy him a $50,000 gift to get back into his good graces. So Jeffrey buys him that bracelet, and then they are in Aspen. They're at Jeffrey's private home, and they go to dinner. And at dinner, Jeffrey's making small talk with him, and he notices that the prince orders prosciutto. And pork is forbidden.
So there's no way that a
Islam.
Saudi prince would order prosciutto.
No way.
That would be like, that is truly way, way, way out of bounds.
Way way out of bounds. So imagine he's gotten this far, and this is not the photo at dinner. I'll explain this in a second, and he's sitting with Jeffrey Soffer, and he's about to be part of the Fontainebleau, and he orders prosciutto. Now, Jeffrey doesn't say anything. He just makes note of the fact that this alleged prince is eating pork, and he hires a private investigator, and it is, in fact, that prosciutto that takes him down.
That is just unreal.
Yeah. It's unreal. That photo, actually, that I showed is something from his Instagram a year earlier, and there's pork. So anybody who had been following him on Instagram and known it was him would have known. But it's really interesting that this one mistake that he makes sends him to jail for 18 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm. No pork, no jail time. And you get away with all of that money.
Yeah. If you had just gone away or not, or to the point we were making earlier, just a little bit more research on what you're supposed to do. It's truly remarkable. And in fact, all those diamonds and the watches and everything, which I was trying to show you, all fake. It was all fake. Like, he was spending money, but he still didn't have access to like all of the money that he was perpetuating as part of this lie. On social. So,
absolutely wild.
Really, really interesting story. He is in jail. The sad part is that Carl ends up committing suicide December 16th, 2017. The police come to his house. He says he didn't know that Anthony was not a prince. He believed him to be a prince. And then after they left, he committed suicide.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is...
and this is more recent photos of Anthony. So
I know you, as an aficionado of true crime, probably delighted that somebody lost their life in all of this, even though it was poor Carl, who was also taken in, and investors were sucked in by his line of...
Yeah. I mean, they both could be on a beach somewhere very far away enjoying life, but
Social Butterfly Beauty says, wow, Courtney, great story. Nuts.
Well, yeah.
The moral of the story, says A-Golf, is research your grift.
Or get out early.
Yeah.
Know your timing. So.
Right. Okay.
But in all seriousness, it's a very sad ending and a very crazy
It's a
story.
remarkable tale, though, because here's this kid who's kicked from orphanage to orphanage. He, essentially grows up on the street. Then he comes up with this scheme and he's called out on the scheme multiple times. In fact, arrested multiple times, but still ultimately one time he pulls the scheme off. And then once he had somebody who was on the insider in the Saudi family.
Yeah, that really helped.
Then he could really take it to another level. Yeah. Wow. That was a great, great, great one, Courtney. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
That is True Crime Corner for today.
True Crime Corner, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.